All right. Welcome, everyone. So glad to see you and glad that you're joining us. We are live on Facebook as well as on Zoom. So just working on that engineering a little bit. We'll take a moment just to allow for a couple more people to join us. Thank you for joining us here on APS Stamp Chat. Watching the room and I'm watching Facebook just to see, make sure that more people are on before we get started. All right. One moment. Well, thank you for your patience, everyone. Hi, I'm Heidi, and welcome to Stamp Chat. This is from the American Philatelic Society, of course, and we're excited to bring you a new interactive series that we're calling Ask a Dealer, and I thought of no better place to start than with two YPLF graduates, Michael Cortese and Charles Epting, today. As I said, this is our first interactive that we're having, and perhaps you joined us this morning for the award ceremony, of which I'd like to congratulate our two guests, again, Michael Cortese and Charles Epting, for winning the PTS Creative Concept of the Year Award. We're really thrilled for you, and we appreciate what you bring to the hobby and are thrilled for your accomplishments. Michael Cortese's philatelic background can be summed up in one word: family. For Cortese, philately is a family affair. In 1992, after his parents arrived in the United States from Italy, Michael's father decided to make a living as a full-time stamp dealer. He began selling in a traditional sense through ads and different auction houses. But once eBay was launched, his father jumped on the opportunity to start an e-commerce business. At age 8, Michael started showing an interest in stamps. His father sat down beside him and looked at the Scott catalog to teach him how to identify them. Throughout middle school, high school, and college, Michael was able to work part-time in the business, and in 2014, Michael joined the family business full-time. He's contributed to the growth of the business, scaling it up from its original 4 employees to operating out of a 3-story converted mill with 18 employees. Michael resides in New Hampshire and is also a 2013 APS YPLF graduate. Charles Epting is also with us on Ask the Dealer. Charles is the president of H.R. Harmer Fine Stamp Auctions in Midtown Manhattan. An alumnus of the APS's Young Philatelic Leadership Fellowship, Epting began collecting stamps while a student at the University of Southern California. His articles appeared in the American Philatelists, the Chronicle, First Days, the American Stamp Dealer and Collector, and other philatelic publications. Epting's collecting interests range from the National Recovery Administration to French philatelic exhibitions, although he's seemingly in the process of beginning a new collection at any given time. And of course, we can appreciate that. Now, friends, we're going to get started, but a few things. This is a live stream and we encourage interaction. However, all audio is respectively muted throughout the chat. So if instead you'll use the Q&A box or the chat box in Zoom and the comment box in Facebook. Thank you so much. Welcome, Charles, and welcome, Michael.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Heidi, for having us.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So why don't we get started and do a little bit of, tell us, one of the reasons why we decided to have this was because we realized that there may be some holes where in people's understanding of auctions and how they work.
I'll let you go first, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Charles and I come from 2 completely different worlds, the world of physical auction house and the world of eBay. They're almost unrecognizable in a sense, the kind of material that we deal with and the kind of material that we we can break down. I'd say probably the largest difference, if I was to talk about just pinpointing one or two things, would be the amount of material that we can process online on eBay compared to traditional auction houses because of the lower bar for average sale price. So auction houses tend to sell higher priced items, or they have a higher threshold for the items that they can sell, and places like eBay or dealers like us have a much lower threshold for the items that we can sell, and because of that we can turn over items much quicker. I think from taking in consignments, the day something walks in the door on a Monday, we can have it listed and up for sale on the Wednesday after that. We appraise it on the Tuesday and the Wednesday because we don't have catalogs. But because of that, there's no lead time on items. So if we get a $5,000 catalog value stamp, our lead time is just the 10-day window that eBay allows for us, unless we're putting it in a store or price protecting it that way. So we operate very, very differently, and because of that, I think we've got some customer or consignor overlap, but there's a lot of difference there. So I think we're just here to talk about and help anyone who's interested in the differences between what I do and what Charles does, because as they are in the same umbrella of philately, they're worlds apart almost.
Ostensibly, we're doing very much the same thing in two very different ways. I feel like with a traditional auction house like H.R. Harmer, a lot of what we're doing is the way that stamp auctions have been conducted for 150 years, very nearly. Whereas Michael, yourselves on eBay are taking full advantage of what modern technology allows us. And you're right, the minimum lot value is a huge difference. The printed catalog is a huge difference. The turnaround time, we typically hold 2 sales every year, or 2 groups of auctions every year. In a year like 2020, when nothing seemed to go according to plan, it was slightly higher than that. But again, the fact that you guys constantly have things going on, we tend to have sort of a cycle where there's auctions, there's time to gather material, time to put a catalog together, and then auctions again. Again, you're right that we are seemingly doing the same thing, just in 2 completely different ways, and really looking to serve, I would say, different customers for the different items that we handle.
Yeah, and because of that, we have a lot of different kinds of employees. I imagine that, Charles, the most of the employees you have are lot describers. Whereas us, we have 18 people working for us, whether it be through programmers, people shipping, lot describers, photographers. We only have 4 out of the 18. We only have 4 lot describers, myself and my father included. And the majority of the other people working for us are photographers. And they're people that we instruct on how to shoot the material, but then we really, because of the turnover in material we really let the photographs do the talking for us. So our employees are a lot different as well. We don't have the description that auction houses have.
And it's funny that you say the majority of your employees are photographers, because we have a husband and wife couple who do all of our scanning and all of our catalog layout for us. So we literally just have 2 people handle all of the imaging. But when you're dealing with a much smaller volume of material, we can get away with just having 2 people handle everything.
Yeah.
I think Heidi.
So the 2020 mute. So friends, this is an interactive chat. I know that Michael and Charles can certainly talk to us. They have that great podcast. But this is really an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can ask them on Facebook, or you can ask them in Zoom. What is it that you're looking for? Why are you here? What brought you, why did you come to ask a dealer? What sort of questions? And have you experienced, and I can
kick things off. I've got a question for Charles.
You do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we can fill this kind of the time as well. So, 2 auctions a year on average. How many boxes do you think that would be? I know you've got consigners who send you 10 boxes, or consigners who just send you 2 items. So
I think it's interesting that you think in terms of
right. Yeah.
I think in terms of number of lots. I think
Okay.
evidence of how differently. When we were in California before spring of last year, so H.R. Harmer was in California for about 10 or so years. We had a lot more physical space. The footprint of the office was a lot larger. So there we were dealing with anywhere between 400 and 800 boxes per auction. And when I say box, I'm talking about banker's box size boxes. We were somewhere in the 400 to 800 box range, which was it was a lot. And oftentimes you'll have a lot that's 10 or 12 boxes and sells for $100, and the cost of shipping is double or triple what the lot sells for. So when we moved to New York, we made we realized that space was going to be much more of a limitation. I mean, just in terms of logistics, we used to be on the ground level with a rolling door and a dock in the back. Now we're on the 26th floor. We're nearly a football field into the air, and it's much more difficult to get material up to the office. So this last sale, if we had to box everything up, I'd say we were looking at somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 boxes versus 300 to 400 in the past. So it's forced us to sort of re-examine and change our business model, moving from California to New York, where space is such a premium.
Is it the same amount of lots?
That's what's fun. The number of lots is more or less the same. It's consistent across the auctions.
Wow.
We've just managed to turn what used to be the larger box lots we've reduced, and the single lots we've increased. So it's been interesting to see the catalog remain the same size, but the volume of the auction shrink so much. How many boxes would you say you get in per week, per month? What's your?
Yeah, I mean, generally we go through about 200 to 300 boxes a month. So yeah, we turn things over. But again, the similar kind of thing. We don't sell things 12 cartons at a time, but we'll sell things, a carton at a time, and it could go for $50, and then it costs more to ship it to Australia. It costs $300 to ship it to Australia, but the guy bought it for $50, and then, heaven forbid, he wants to return it.
Guys, we've got some questions coming in. Thanks for warming up. You guys are just the quintessential hosts. Thank you. One of our top fans, Deborah Lee, and you were on our stamp story. So hi, Dr. Deborah Lee. What do you look for when accepting a consignment?
Do you want to go first, Charles?
Sure. That's a question that can be answered so many ways, I feel. When we look at a collection, I guess the easiest answer is we're looking for things that we think will sell well. I know it's sort of a simple answer, but a lot of times we're looking for things that either jump out at us, things that we haven't seen before is always something that I find really interesting. There was a woman who came to our office a couple of weeks ago who had what looked like a typical beginner stamp album from the mid 20th century. There's countless albums out there, whether it's the modern stamp album or the Harris International. It was your sort of run of the mill stamp album, and I was flipping through it, and there's nothing great, nothing screaming at me, and I was getting ready to have the talk that it might be better donated, it might be better if you find a youth group or somebody who might appreciate it and love it. And then out of the back of the album fall 2 matched sets of Zepp covers, all 3 values, and I said, well, there you go, those will do well. So for us, it's really about leaving no stone unturned. I always tell people we go through everything, every page of a collection. You never know when you're going to find that one stamp. That's something that's really important to us. It's really easy, but unfair to judge a book by its cover. Had I looked at the cover of this album and said we don't want it, the Zepp covers would have walked out the door, which would have been unfortunate. So for me, that's really what it's about, is just going page by page, giving every collection the same attention, the same amount of your time, because they all deserve it. This was somebody's pride and joy at one point. And it's on us, and I would assume you're the same, Michael. Where
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, what we're looking for is anything that jumps out and speaks to us, and a lot of times you just know it when you see it. But more than anything, we want to make sure that we again flip through every page. Don't assume that just because the first 90% of the album is nothing, that last 10% is not going to have something. So maybe you can agree or disagree, Michael.
No, yeah, I completely agree. In addition to that, we also kind of look for the bread and butter kind of material, mint sets and stuff that we know that just is crisp and fast and easy. And we don't, because of the difference between auction house and eBay, is we don't turn much stuff away. But what we look for is definitely, as to mirror what you said, sellable material. I think one of the larger differences between Harmer and us is we buy material as well. You guys just take consignment. So if something comes in and we can't take it on consignment, we can at least make them an offer, or suggest they donate it to the youth group or a museum or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we'll take the Zeppelin sets too. Yeah, the Zeppelin covers.
The concept of bread and butter, I think that's a great way of phrasing it. It's very important as well. There's things that you sort of need to have in every auction, but should sort of count on having in every auction. The Zeppelin covers, not unique in any way, not terribly rare, but these are the things that we sell sale after sale. You can always count on, like a white plain souvenir sheet, a set of Zeppelins. There's these things that, Kansas, Nebraska, they're just sort of these.
I was just going to say that.
I was going to say, that is the bread and butter. That's grist for the mill. You always need white plain sheets. That's the sort of thing that will always sell. You could go buy thousands of them if you had to. They're not, rare per se, but they're the backbone of our business, of our trade. They're the things that you can always count on selling for the same price.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree.
We have another question coming in. I'd like to hear a bit about estimating and pricing covers as opposed to stamps, where you can use a variety of catalogs.
That's a more difficult one.
It is. Mike, you go first.
No, I was gonna say you can go first.
Estimating the value of covers is really difficult, and we're in the middle of. We just held the fourth part of what's planned to be a 10-part sale of the Arivon collection, which is a remarkable holding of United States postal history, as well as other countries that are being sold elsewhere. But a lot of these covers have not been seen since the 1950s. There's covers that were last offered publicly as part of the Alfred Caspary collection in 1956 or 1957, and they're unique. It's the only one in the world, and it was last sold 63 years ago. How do you know what it's worth? And it's a really tough question. That's why we try to keep as extensive a library as possible, and we try and cross-reference. I keep a spreadsheet. If I see that so-and-so's auction has a great selection of Confederate provisionals or locals and carriers, I try and keep a running spreadsheet so that when I see one of these things in my hands, obviously past auction records are the most reliable and current guide for the prices of rare covers. A lot of these things don't end up in dealer stocks. They don't end up on eBay. They typically appear at auction, sometimes very infrequently. And whenever we're describing a cover, and we have a little private notes field where we can type things that the public can't see, and that notes field is invariably, we sold a similar cover 4 years ago for this much. Siegel sold a similar cover 6 years ago for this much. Skylar Rumsey sold one. And, sometimes the numbers don't align. And a lot of it is, with auction, a lot of our estimate, or we use a start price in lieu of an estimate. And a lot of that is an educated guess. I'm not going to beat around the bush and say that we know exactly what we're doing. A lot of times we come up with a number that we think is fair to protect the consignor's interest, and we think is low enough to be attractive and appealing to a potential buyer. And we put that out there, and sometimes we're right on the mark, and there's one or two bidders right at that number. And sometimes our number, gets multiplied by 10 or 20. And I love when that happens personally. But a lot of it is, you have to make an educated guess. You can't just pick a number out of a hat. But when you're dealing with the really rare and the really remarkable items, a lot of covers do have a Scott catalog value. If you look at what a 50-cent Colombian is on cover, there is a Scott catalog value, and there's obviously a lot of variables like destination and the condition of the cover. But when you're dealing with the unique or nearly unique stuff, you have to refer to sales of the last 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you just have to keep your fingers crossed.
And it doesn't even have to be unique. It could just be multiples on cover. It could be 4 50-cent Colombians, which, why didn't they just... Yeah, I mean, if you know where the cover came from, it's a lot easier. But if you don't, I mean, we get away with, you say you have starting prices. I feel like we get away easier because we've got 99-cent no reserve auctions. And sometimes
you don't have to know anything.
But no, but for rare stuff that comes in, we're definitely where we price protect it, or we start something, or we put a reserve on it, or we put it in our store. Those for covers are always a little bit more difficult, and we try to be a little more cautious, because there are some really rare covers out there that can just slip right under your nose, and you could let it pass, and you didn't know that you had something that was worth $1,200. You thought it was worth $500, and that was the price point that it sold for 10 years ago, but now it's doubled in value and then some, and it covers are a lot more difficult because almost all of them are unique in their own way.
Sorry, guys. This comment comes in from one of our Facebook Live friends. He's asking, Michael, can you talk about how you manage inventory? Do you check inventory before purchasing items? Do you price items differently for slower moving items?
So pricing it for slower moving items is an interesting comment, because I feel like that's something that we bring up to a lot of people when we're buying material. Because in a sense, yes, if I'm going to purchase something and I know that I bring it in on Monday and it goes out on a Tuesday, I know I can pay a little bit more for that, because it's turning over and it's containing the cash flow easily. But if I'm buying something and it's 200 cartons and I know it's going to take a long time to process, for collections like that, generally we suggest consigning them, because we're not going to be able to purchase them for what because they take so long. We're not going to be able to purchase them for what the person would get on consignment. It's tougher because of that, because we process so much material, because we have so many consigners, things that come in that we've got a lot of I don't want to say nice, but we've got a lot of clean, easy consigners who ship us their material. They're already dealers and they've already lotted the material up. Those things go right up. But if we get consigners who bring in material that we've got to break everything down, that takes longer, and that goes into consideration when purchasing material. Definitely, and it's something that I do bring up when purchasing the material, that considering the price, that I can't do anything with this material right now. I'm going to have to wait 4 months, because I've got consigners that are waiting for their material to be listed, and there's a long line, and it comes into it because of cash flow. Yeah. And I forget the first question. Inventory. How do we process it?
Yeah.
So this collection has been here. Yeah, you laugh because it's been here
every conversations with Philatelists.
Yeah, it's been here 7 months. But I assure you, these albums are moving. You can actually kind of see in the bottom right-hand corner. This thing here wraps around to almost right here, and these albums are slowly disappearing. But this is a collection that we've been working on for the past year and a half. The guy was in Massachusetts, and it was a multi-million-dollar catalog value collection, and we have to pull every single stamp out individually. The guy who consigned it to us was not himself a collector, but he purchased it from a collector. So when he handed it to us, nothing was identified. So if I pull something off the shelf here, I've got to go through with a Scott catalog and pull out all the stamps individually. And again, there's no lead time, so I pulled France off the shelf. This week we're selling France. But it's tough for me to tell our customers that, if we're not sending out regular newsletters like, by the way, we're selling France this week. If we get a large consignment in of a specific country, we'll do that. And for specific consigners, we've actually done that. For this consigner a year and a half ago, we did send out a newsletter saying, please look out for the consigner with the tag RB. Is very, very valuable material. There's a lot of it that went in our store. So, and a lot of it that we did price protect with starting prices. Not so much reserves, because giving it a look behind the window almost, or the curtain, reserves are higher fee on eBay. So if we want to place a reserve on an item instead of a starting price, I believe I was going to ask you for clarity, Charles. I think it's like a 5% or something fee on top of whatever the reserve is. So we tend not to do that for consigners because we don't want to charge them any more than we have to. But for consignments like this, we'll take it. We'll pull all the stamps out individually. After looking through the catalog, we decide which items that we feel we need to price protect, which are what we talked about before, not necessarily bread and butter. They're rarer items that we wish we could give lead time, but because we're not an auction house, we can't. So we don't feel that while there are millions of stamp buyers on eBay, we don't feel that a 10-day window is enough for this particular item to realize the price that we feel it should realize, because it's superb mint never hinge, or it's a scarce item, or maybe it's a scarce item that isn't in that great condition that we know will go for a low percentage of catalog value if we auction it. But if we keep it in our stores, someone who really wants that item will come along and make an offer that we can bring to the consignor and they feel more comfortable with, because it is a higher catalog value item, even dependent on the condition. So something like this, we tackle in 3 different tiers. Once we pulled all the stamps out, then we just catalog the album and sell it. This is one of the easy, even though it's longer to do, and you will see these albums slowly start to disappear, it is one of the easier kind of collections to deal with, because a lot of the consignment, I'd say about 40% of the consignments we get in are just boxes full of stuff that we have to use our best knowledge to break down. We got first day covers shoved in between album pages, and it's a lot of material that we work very hard to make sure that people get the most money for it as possible. I hope that gave some clarity to the question. I didn't talk too long on it.
No, not at all. That's why you're on. We want to know. Charles, was there anything that you wanted to add to that? Anything?
There was not, because your system is very different than ours. So I'm learning a lot about what you do, but I did. And so since you answered that question, I just saw one pop up in the Zoom chat can I address one really quick? I don't
please go for it. Yes.
But a very good question I thought was to talk about the financials associated with dealing both online and through auctions, cost, revenue, etc. And there's one specific aspect of this I wanted to bring up, that since you have a lot of things we don't deal with, Michael, in terms of, eBay fee. I didn't know it costs more to set a reserve. That's something I just wanted to use. So one thing that we are constantly dealing with and grappling with is the cost associated with printing catalogs, which is not something I thought of. When I would ask auction houses to send me catalogs so I could buy $100 lot out of them. I never thought about how much went into just the production of auction catalogs. And you look at catalogs from the 50s, 60s, 70s. There's no color, obviously. Maybe the color front cover and a little tiny, set of photo plates. But now we're, printing a catalog that's essentially a book. Our catalogs are between 200 and 400 pages, full color, perfect bound. It's not cheap. And something we learned that was really interesting in that regard is that it's much, much cheaper to print auction catalogs over in Europe than it is in the US, which I don't know if it's a regulatory thing or what, but the cost of printing catalogs is radically cheaper over in Europe. But obviously the cost of shipping catalogs from Europe to the US is higher. So there's sort of this constant struggle where currently we print our auction catalogs in Germany, and it's cheaper to ship them via FedEx from Germany to US addresses than to print them in the US and ship them. But we're trying to work with new printers. I would say that outside of the, obviously there's rent, there's salaries, there's the basic costs that are associated with every business. The highest cost that is unique to ourselves as an auction house, that we're always looking for new new ways to deal with, is this cost of printing catalogs. And I know that it was either Christie's or Sotheby's who announced this year that they're cutting their auction catalogs by 50%, the distribution of their catalogs. So I think this is something facing all auctioneers, not just in the philatelic world. But in terms of, when I came into the company, that was not something I expected. And it's something that I'm constantly trying to think about, new creative ways to reduce how much money we're putting out on auction catalogs, while still, a big draw of consigning to a conventional auction is to have your material appear in a catalog. It's sort of, it's one of the greatest things about running an auction house is putting out these beautiful sometimes hardbound catalogs. That's even more expensive. You put together a catalog you're really proud of, but at the same time, that is a growing cost. The cost of printing and shipping these things goes up every year, and it's something that was news to me when I joined the company, and something I find myself thinking about quite a bit. So again, every business has certain costs that are to be expected, but for us, it's that auction catalog that caught me off guard, I would say.
It's something that I hadn't considered. There's been auction houses that we purchased from once or twice in the past, 5 years ago, and they're still sending us auction catalogs, and that must be a tremendous burden financially to ship auction catalogs. I'd be fine looking at those things online, and I hate to say it. Sometimes we receive the catalog and I just go online and look at it, and I know it because it's easier for me to write down things on Excel. Copy and paste it over from the online catalog. It is the tactile feeling of an auction. Tactile feeling. The feeling of an auction catalog is, it's not something that can be replaced. But yeah, it must be I hadn't considered the financial burden of the auction catalogs. It's not something that we have to deal with. It's just eBay and PayPal fees, and now sales tax, internet sales tax, that is, which we didn't really have to deal with.
That's a whole
before.
other conversation.
That is a whole other conversation. I could talk for days on that.
The less I have to talk about that, the better.
It might be worthwhile. So, I'm going to hook you for the next class. I'm like that.
Yeah.
And one of our friends on the Zoom chat did say that they appreciate that the PDF is much easier to search.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's true.
I think that the solution moving forward is a dual approach, where you make it easy for people to download, and if somebody still wants to receive it, we're not looking to remove anyone from our list if they still want the physical catalog.
No, of course. And some of those catalogs, like you said, the hardbound ones are incredibly impressive. We use them as reference collections. I say that I search for the online ones, but it's almost nicer when you're looking for something, if you remember what auction it was in, to just use the actual physical catalog. Well, while admitting that online searches probably are quicker and faster and easier. It's nice to hold and see something.
Yeah, the analog revolution. Okay. So this is to you, Michael.
Okay.
Noble Spirit estimators look at recent sales and current offers of similar material on eBay. I've noticed some Noble Spirit material which is offered well above recent sales and current asking prices of similar material, and wondered why.
You're on the hot seat, Michael.
Yeah, probably talking about the store. So that's something that uh, we decided. We a lot of times we are for collections. Our hands are tied with our consigners, and sometimes for individual stamps, we've had. I don't want to use the word issues, but we've had instances in the past where our consigners feel that their stamps are worth well above market value or retail value or well above catalog value, which hasn't always been the case. But for store items, it's tough because we do get so many items in that are store quality, but we don't have, and I know this it'll sound a little strange, but we don't have time to go through every single thing. So we generally price all store items at around 70 to 80% of catalog and then take offers on them. And that it's been strange because on items where I see that it's definitely not worth that, I'll say price it at 50%. Things that we throw up there at 80% that are it didn't come across my desk first. We've accidentally let go that definitely probably should have been worth more than catalog value. And people just hit the buy it now button. And but generally for our store items, and I'm assuming that's what they're talking about because our auctions are all 99 cents. We price things at around 70 to 80% of catalog value and then just let people make offers. And when the offer comes in, we look at the stamp and we say, okay, this stamp is really only worth 10% of catalog or 20% of catalog, and we take the offer. But we don't, I would love to have the time to go through I think it's something like 3,000 or 4,000 store items that are up there right now and evaluate them based on what I feel that the value of the market value of the stamp is based on catalog value. But with all the material that we keep getting in, 200 to 300 cartons a month, and the turnover that we're getting on our store items is sometimes, not always, quite quick. I can't keep up with it, and we do have, like I'd mentioned before, 4 catalogers in the in the office who work on breaking down material. 2 of them aren't quite at the, I'll use the word authorized, aren't authorized to price the material for store items. Those 2 people would just be myself and my father. And my father spends most of his time talking with people and evaluating coin collections as well. I should be more knowledgeable on coins, but he's our coin, paper money, all other kinds of collectibles expert. So anytime stamps come in, usually they go mainly to me, first to me. And then I'll just pick out things that this needs to go in the store, this needs to go in the store, this needs to go in the store. And I throw it to our person who's dedicated for photographing stamps that are over $4,000 catalog value and placing any items in stores. We have someone dedicated for that. She's been with us about 7 years. She's absolutely fantastic. And she just places everything 70 to 80% because she doesn't do the research or the market value research on through and price those things individually. But unfortunately, sometimes the time escapes me. But for larger collections, those we try to go in and price them based on market value or covers even we that don't have a catalog value. We have to find past sales, like Charles had talked about, and price those out and sell those at hopefully market value. On the flip side, again, sometimes our hands are tied by our consigners.
Charles, do people contact you to pre-plan consignments, for example, to help a trustee with future estate planning?
Absolutely, that happens quite a bit. I know a couple of estate lawyers in New York who are coming to me on a fairly regular basis with clients who just want to know, a lot of times they don't even know what their own stuff is worth. They bought it 30 years ago and they want to know what the current market value is. But there are a lot of people, and I think that it's great when people consider, even if they're not looking to sell, if they don't know when they plan on selling their collection. I think it's really good to at least consider these things and at least have conversations about how the collection is to be dispersed someday, because unfortunately, a lot of times, if there's no plan in place, then the collection gets mishandled, whether intentionally or not. Somebody might make an inappropriate offer on it, or it just gets donated or passed around or stuck in a closet and damaged. And we really do try and work with people proactively while they're still building the collection, to someday think about what happens when it comes time to disperse of the collection. Unfortunately, all too often, by the time the collection is to be sold, it's too late to do anything. So we like to help people plan that well in advance, just so that there's some sort of plan for a widow, for a child, for a grandchild, to know what's coming. We think that's really important to do, again, while the collector is active, while the collector is still actively accumulating material. There's young people I've spoken to about, hey, what were to happen someday? It's not a pleasant or fun part of the hobby. I would say it's a difficult part of the hobby, but it's an essential one if you if you want these collections to be done right by, if you want them to be treated respectfully and properly and as they should be treated. It's a necessary conversation that needs to be had, and we certainly work with people planning their estates all the time.
Mm-hmm. And we've certainly covered that in the AP and on digital content on stamps.org. So you can be sure to visit stamps.org, where we do talk about estate planning. So that's cool that you guys do it as well over there. I had a question come to mind. I'm seeing all the material behind you, Michael, and it reminded me of Jasmine Smith, Michael and Charles. I mean, what do you guys do in terms of, Jasmine was on and talking about archiving and preservation and, like kind of the humidor for philatelic, material. How do you guys safeguard the integrity of your material?
I think, I'll tackle that. Yeah.
Okay.
We keep a lot of material in-house. So we've got a large 3-story mill building, and it's climate controlled because people are in here working. And we do a lot of our storage in house here. Well, we also have 2 other locations. We have another, I think it's 2,000 square foot building that's sealed and climate controlled, that we store a lot of our larger material in, box lots and consigners who ship 100 cartons at a time. The things go straight there, and then we bring them in through a conveyor belt on the side of the building. And then the third location is actually just I don't know why I'm pointing. You can't see it. It's over there. It's just a little shed, probably 1,000 square feet, that is for more collectible material, not so much stamps. That doesn't need to be as it needs to be safeguarded, but not as safeguarded. It's on premises right here, so behind our fences and cameras. The other building is got cameras as well, but everything is sealed in buildings with cameras, climate controlled, and we've never had a problem with material having to consider preserving material, because it's generally not an issue that we have. But items coming to us, we've definitely experienced some items that have not been preserved correctly before, that we have to try and fix with charcoal.
That Charles is nodding.
Charles?
Yeah, sometimes people don't always know how to ship things safely and properly.
Oh yeah, that's a great point, Charles.
That's what I notice are packages that come in. Again, once they're in our office, the building is up to code. Everything everything remains safe. It's more that either when they're left in a barn or something, or a garage, or again in transit, quite often things will appear different than when they were packed into the box, I'm sure.
Yeah, we always tell people to ship things things in double-walled boxes, and even if they can, put them inside of a trash bag, because sometimes the environmental stuff happens, and the FedEx person drops the box in a puddle, and it this box starts to deteriorate. If it's in a plastic bag, then at least it'll be somewhat okay. More okay than if it wasn't in a plastic bag. But yeah, I didn't even consider that as a part of the question, Charles. Transit is definitely a huge issue.
Speaking of transit, it's going to take us a little bit off the rails here. We have somebody who's really interested in knowing which countries or regions do you find are increasing in popularity and which are declining. A little footnote, excluding China and India, that's a given. Thank you to our Indian friends and Chinese friends. We know that philately is booming over in your countries.
I think this probably is a bit different for both of us, Charles, if you want to take this first.
Yeah, so I in terms of countries, I'm gonna go more with the which philatelic areas are increasing in price, because I've been sort of I've had sort of laser focus on U.S. material lately. We had 2 big sales of postal history, and I've been looking at those markets very closely. I was blown away last week by what patriotic covers were doing. Civil War patriotics are selling for exceptional prices compared to even 2 years ago. U.S. possessions have been doing well for us. We've had a lot of really good results from Philippines in particular, but also Guam, Cuba, DWI, Puerto Rico. So we held a specialized sale of Philippines. When was that? In August. And I mean, we had things selling for the Victory hand stamp overprints from the 40s, selling for double and triple Scott catalog.
Wow.
And then, so I'll let you take the international side of things, Mike.
Yeah.
My last answer within the U.S. Is we had a specialized sale of postal stationery last week, which is not a market I know too much about. I read the Journal every other month when it comes out, but I don't have my finger on the pulse of that market. And when I'm calling the auction, I have one screen that shows me the description and one screen that shows me where the current bidding is at. And I love watching, when it says Scott catalog value $425 and my other screen says $1,800 is my favorite thing in the world, when there's this just seeming disconnect between the two values. So between really anything Civil War related, Confederate provisionals, general issues, Confederate postal history, patriotic covers, the Civil War era market is doing really well. The U.S. possessions market, I think, is doing really well, and the postal stationery market seems to be doing really well. These are just the 3 areas in the last couple of months and couple of weeks that have jumped out at me as I think, man, I'd love more of that stuff in our auctions.
I've got a follow up before I answer my part of the question. I've got a follow up question for Charles, if you would. And of course, everything is condition specific. But to what degree do you think those items that were going for 4 or 3 times catalog value were condition specific only? Do you think it's just the kind of item, or is it the condition of it?
So that's actually a really good question, because obviously, if you have an exceptional something, it's going to sell for more than it's got catalog value if it's graded 100 or whatever. But what's interesting about the Philippines, particularly in the 20s, 30s, 40s, you want to talk about...
I do. I don't know what you're going to say, but I do want to talk about it.
When you want to talk about environmental conditions, so many of these stamps from the Philippines, the gum is tropicalized. The humidity in the Philippines just turned this gum a horrible brown color that would soak through. That you can see it from the front of the stamp. They had these wax paper interleaving between them, so the stamps would get stuck to the wax paper. So it's technically original gum, but the original gum is underneath another layer. So for any other country, these stamps would be considered faulty and damaged and just not very beautiful from a purely aesthetic standpoint. But with the Philippines, that's sort of par for the course. You sort of take what you can get with this stuff. So these, I think a lot of, at least in the possessions, what we've been seeing is not condition specific. It's a really good question. I would say a lot of that stuff is genuine interest and genuine rarity in average examples of these items. Which has been interesting. Again, obviously you're going to exceed Scott catalog value with certain things by the very nature of the quality. but that's not indicative of a larger market trend. With Philippines and the other areas I mentioned, I think a lot of it is I'm seeing new people jump in, into the market. There's things we're selling, and there's 2-3 underbidders who are new to me. We don't have them in our system. I think that there is a lot of renewed interest in these areas, and it's not just because of the condition, but that is definitely another factor. There's so many answers that seem easy to give, and then you realize how many moving parts there are, and there's no way to summarize a lot of market trends, I would say. And again, that's my best take on what we've sold in terms of U.S. material. How have you been doing with foreign material? What are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing is, of course, excluding China and India, I feel, but just kind of near the same kind of area, we're seeing a lot of interest in Korea, but also Egypt as well. We've been seeing a lot of interest in good quality mint Egypt sets, and British Commonwealth, of course. But the British Commonwealth as it is has to be gem never hinged, and they're really looking for the best of the best, but the best of the best goes for telephone numbers. But I'd say surprisingly Egypt, we've been seeing a lot of interest for lately. On the flip side, the declining, the second part of the question, I don't know what and I know you said you've mostly US, but for us, we've always struggled with Canada and Italy. Those are two that I love. Canadian, hand in my heart, I love Canadian stamps. They look fantastic, especially the provinces and stuff. But they just don't make the catalog value that I feel like they deserve. Even the Jubilee issues, I feel like these things should be getting close to percentage of catalog value as the Colombians do, because they're as beautiful. But they're just not, and
we had noticed a similar trend in Canada, obviously over the last couple of years. This is way too recent to pick up on any sort of trend. Yeah. But I think our Canadian material last week did better than it had done. Now, whether that's a result of special circumstances this year or whatnot, but I agree that these stamps are certainly rare enough to warrant a decent percentage of catalog, and certainly beautiful enough. And I think that, and then with Italy, I think a lot of people are intimidated by the Italian states. I would say I am. That's not an indictment of it. That's me, admittedly. An area like that, even with German states as well, where there's so many forgeries and so many good forgeries that are over a century old. I think that some of the early, and then Italy in the 30s and 40s, right? You have to assume that I'm not going to make a generalization. A lot of the used material out there, so many people are used to used being more common than mint. In Italy in the 20s, 30s, 40s, the used oftentimes catalogs more than the mint, and there's a huge number of forged mint stamps of the high value.
Same with the German overprint Zeppelins. We rarely touch those without a certificate.
Exactly. Again, it's sort of, I think Italy might be because it's that weird inverse where people assume that used is common. A lot of those, again, when in Italy would have these sets of 15 or 18 stamps, and the high values used are so scarce. Maybe that's why Italy, I agree that Italy never seems to reach levels it should, and I think some of that might just be confusion or skepticism. At least when we get material, that's how I look at it.
Right.
Michael, you mentioned or you guys were just speaking about expertising and the certificate. So as many of you on the call know, stamps.org offers expertising. Do you offer that? If a collection comes in, do you do authentication, or do you want it from?
Do you mean send stuff out?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. If we get a consignment in and we think that an item needs to be paired with a certificate, we'll definitely suggest sending it out.
Philippines 16A.
Yeah. If a consignment comes in, if we buy material, we're slower to send material out than we are if a consignment comes in, because we're looking to prioritize the consigners over our own material a lot of the time. So we'll send stuff out that comes in as on consignment for certificates, but yes. We will send things out, or if people see something in our store and they say this should be paired with a certificate, can you send it out before I buy it? We're going to do that too.
In terms of our operation, a lot of times we will send things out before the sale for a certificate, so that when somebody buys it, they have that new certificate with it. But we also, and this is sort of standard operating procedure amongst auction houses, if something doesn't have a certificate, you can buy it on extension. I'm sure this is, I'm looking at a lot of faces here who this will not be news to, but when buying at auction, if you let us know that you want to buy it on extension, you want it to receive a certificate, we sort of, I always have trouble explaining, we sort of freeze that sale. That sale is sort of locked until the item goes out and receives a certificate. The consignor doesn't get paid for it. The buyer typically doesn't pay for it. It's just sort of in limbo while that item is out getting a certificate. If it's genuine, then the buyer buys they own the stamp and they pay for the certificate. If it's not genuine, the buyer is not obligated to buy the stamp any longer. So it's sort of an added level of protection when buying with an auction house. If you can't inspect something in person, or if you're a little bit on the fence, a little bit hesitant about it, we do our best to not let anything slip through the cracks. Invariably, with thousands, tens of thousands of lots, it's going to happen every once in a while. And being able to put something on extension is just a little added layer of protection to our customers that allows them to feel confidence in bidding and purchasing with us.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we do as well, and it's a little more difficult on eBay. But typically, what we have to do is we have to end the item, like you said, we end the item so there's no other interest on it, and then we'll send it out. And then if it comes back with when it comes back with a genuine certificate, we relist the item and have the send the original buyer a direct link so that nobody else can come in and try and take it from them, because it is locked into that person.
Thank you. We're coming down the home stretch, everybody. We're blowing through an hour here. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. Question for you, Charles. What happens with a lot if it is unsold at auction?
It's a very good question. When a lot is unsold at auction, there's sort of two courses of action. We ask the consignor which they would prefer. So a lot goes unsold. We'll call the consignor up and say, hey, 9 of your things sold, 1 of them didn't. A lot of times it will be relisted either in the next auction or in several auctions. Sometimes we like to give it a little bit of time between auctions so that it's not the same thing coming up time and time again. And a lot of times, again, if let's say it's somebody who's selling their father's collection, they might want that one unsold as a sentimental souvenir, a little memento of their father, or maybe it's a collector who decided he wants to get back in the game after selling everything, and he's like, you know what, I want that one back to keep going. So, again, typically one of two things: either we will relist it in the future at a lower price, or we will return it to the consignor, and either way, we're perfectly happy with. We really try and leave it up to the consignor. We try and do whatever we can to make everybody happy.
That's the point.
And it's that spirit that gets you guys awards, because you're very kind and you love this hobby. We've spoken offline about that. Michael, why eBay versus HIP? Yeah,
that's a great question. We know Justin pretty well, the co-creator of we've met him a few times, and basically we've been on eBay since 1998. Not since the direct beginning of eBay. I think it came out a few years before that, but we've been on there for so long that it just became part of the company almost. We get a lot of we work with eBay in a lot of places where they're exclusive consignment seller. So if you go to ebay.com, you click on the collectibles category and you click on Consignment Center for stamps, they recommend who to consign stamps to. That's us. We get that for being exclusive on eBay. Another perk for being exclusive on eBay is we we have a website called Stamp Market Index where we have all of eBay's past records of all stamp auctions that have sold on eBay for the past 14 years. I think it's 15 now because we've been with them for a year. And that's completely searchable. Usually eBay, you can only search in their search bar for past sold auctions in the past 90 days. And it'll bring up with photos and you can look through the inventory that's sold. But with Stamp Market Index, you can search the past 14 years. And it's something we developed almost about a year ago, but we get that data from eBay for being exclusive on eBay. It's not that we don't like Hipstamp. I don't want to get that, it's not, we like Hipstamp. They're doing great work over there. They really are. But the perks that we get with being exclusively eBay and of course going to shows or selling privately to people are enough to stay exclusively with eBay. Stamp Market Index has been hugely successful for us, and we're working really hard right now on a third-party program that we're developing with programmers to help us list and help other people list on eBay. We've been using it in-house for just over a year, and we're soon launching it for other people to list on eBay in the same way that we do. eBay really only allows people to upload 12 photos. With our software, you can upload 500,000. It also tracks inventory. It tracks consigners, which is something that I think only 6-bit does. It tracks shipments, but you can print postage directly from that. This is getting off topic, but we're using our programmers for that. Once they're done with that project, we're putting them back on Stamp Market Index to make that more versatile, more useful. Right now, I feel like it's just a search engine that brings up sales results. But we want to do so much more with it, and we can do so much more, and we have so many more ideas about it that we're excited to explore. So, yeah, that's why eBay.
Well, I think that we have reached our last question. Friends, anybody who comes up with some more questions after the show, feel free to go to stamps.org. You can find Conversations with Philatelists on stamps.org and on the APS YouTube channel. Thank you so much to the two of you for joining us tonight. It's been a big day right after your PTS award-winning ceremony. So congratulations again for winning the Creative Concept of the Year award. I hope to see you in March. Everybody be expecting in the American Philatelist, we will have a buyer's guide. So I think it'd be really apropos and lovely if you would come join us again, and we can prime our guests with the AP and ask questions from there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Stay safe, and be sure to tune in to stamps.org for our when we're going to have another live update. Thank you so much for joining us. Learn more about Charles and Michael, as I said, and their personal connection to the hobby in the APS series Stamp Stories. You can find that, of course, on stamps.org/news. Where you can also find it on the APS YouTube channel. And while you're there, like and subscribe to receive notifications of new content, like the podcast, Conversations with Philatelists, available on the APS YouTube channel. And I believe you all have your own YouTube channel.
That we do, yes. Just Conversations with Philatelists, yeah. We interview different philatelists every week.
I see Eric. We spoke to him.
Yeah, Eric's right there. That was Eric. That was a fantastic conversation. One of my favorites.
You've had philatelic powerhouses. I love seeing Trish Kaufman, and of course Scott English was a hoot. So, it's just fantastic. If you guys haven't listened or watched, do go over to either stamps.org or to YouTube and find Conversations with Philatelists. Subscribe to our free newsletter to find out what's next on Stamp Chat. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and, as I said, YouTube. And if you're not an APS member yet, now's the perfect time to join us. Visit stamps.org/membership and begin receiving member benefits today. Until next time, Stay connected, collecting, and find us on all our social media channels. Remember, we're the APS social since 1874. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining
Thank you.
us.
Thank you,
Thank
Heidi,
you so
for having
much.
us.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.